The old woman in the village was right. This must be the Delorean Church of Humanity in Martinez, or the small pinewood church in some records. It's a minor landmark, not easy to find. Most maps misplace it. It was built not long after Revachol's founding, 300 or so years ago, by first-generation settlers.
On the coast of an uninhabited archipelago where only animals had roamed before, in the wild reeds.
There used to be 7 stave churches on the coast. Les Sept Sœurs, they call them, the 7 sisters. Only one remains. The rest were burnt in the revolution or used for building materials. We should be respectful here, although the building appears to be deserted. I do not believe we'll find anything connected to the lynching here. Something else, perhaps?
Respectful? Is the lieutenant a follower of Deloreanism? A pang of guilt? The lieutenant is leaving something out.
I have a theory, yes. There was a police raid a while back. I heard the place was shot to pieces. The old woman in the village was being tactful with us when she didn't mention it. She has more respect for the RCM than many around here. Well, your station was involved, I hear, although I can't be sure.
How come the lieutenant isn't sure? Is this confidential information?
Well, your station was involved, I hear, although I can't be sure.
How come the lieutenant isn't sure? Is this confidential information?
3 precincts were involved in the raid, and people say Precinct 41 was one of them. I'm sorry, I'm not saying you were. It was a clandestine operation. I don't know anything about it, why it was conducted or who participated. I try not to pry into extra-district matters. Good luck. You will not get information on a confidential operation from your station secretary just by calling. If you really don't remember, it might be better to keep this one forgotten. It happened a while ago. It's unimportant to our business in Martinez now. Yes, we all are. Her name, body, and rule are synonymous with humanism. The laws we enforce are Delorean in origin.
The woman looks by in silence, smiling enigmatically.
It's not spiritual, it's constitutional. The Delorean system does not demand faith, only accordance.
Despite the damage you've done to yourself, the title appears lodged in your hippocampus. This is Her Innocence, Dolores Day, the innocence of humanism, internationalism, and the welfare state. Perhaps the most famous human being ever to have lived. No amount of Commodore Red can wipe her sad smile from your brain thing. It has survived the deluge and haunts you still, and will haunt you forever, as it haunts all men. The highest category of historic individual, an embodiment of the world spirit. More, an Innocence is elected to office by the founding party, a precedent that has taken place a mere 6 times in the entirety of history. The legal system of the Real Belt is built to accommodate an authentic rule should it coincide with our time. And innocence is infallible. The decisions made by one are not decisions. They are inevitabilities. What would have happened anyway? Only accelerated, packed into decades instead of centuries. And innocence is a continuous, compressed event, a sacred human being. It is an honor and a glory to live when one is in office. No, we are alone. 300 years ago, in the wake of the discovery of this Isola, the Insulindian, by explorers from the continent of Muindi, she is, among other things, the innocence of inter-isolary travel and the connected world. Many things, you know she was a woman of the court, the wife of an influential Marchese, and eventually the principal advisor to Irene la Navigator, Queen of Seren, modern-day Sir La Clay, also that she was gorgeous beyond beauty, draped in ancient sadness. Are you sure you want to remember this bit of historic trivia? Standing under a long, slender form like this, dwarfed?
Yes! Big bummer! Boring history! Gonna keep it light, man! Keep it moving! Get fucked up instead!
The past. It's a silo of sadness, fermenting. You should keep away.
Fuck this pain, Bratan! It's unhealthy!
No, you must know. Terribly, women of the court were expected to play both contract bridge and chess sufficiently well to prove an interesting challenge to a man. A simple grasp in matters of philosophy, theology, and science was encouraged. She was, by all means, a kept woman. She made the most of her position in the anti-Delorean court, a court visited by the most prominent thinkers and artists of the day. In secret, she was becoming the era's preeminent philosopher of the state. A scalpel, a piercing gaze. She was an almost preternaturally magnetic and intelligent individual. To her contemporaries, she appeared out of time, a messenger from the future of the species. We all fell in love with her, head over heels. Even before she was declared an innocence, her influence was tremendous. It was on her advice that Irene la Navigator sponsored a number of voyages into the Pale. A costly, often tragic endeavor, ultimately vindicated by the discovery of the new world, the piece of reality you're standing on. She was crowned 2 years after the first expedition returned, setting in motion what is widely considered the greatest era in history. The Delorean era. Wow, indeed. When her innocence was declared, and the queen she had advised for years fell on her knees before her, she was so overcome with emotion that her lungs started glowing in her chest. Bystanders reported golden filaments lighting the already sunlit chamber around her, clearly visible beneath her dress. That is why the lungs are the symbol of love for the cultures of the Real Belt. As did we all, the lands of the Mesk and the Occident, and even faraway Supramuindi, altogether 21 of the 40 mundial nations of the time, immediately accepted Innocentic rule. even before her crowning. In a city called Advesperaskit in Vespa Messina, her homeland, the name of the city means evening comes, but it happened on a winter's morning with the canals frozen and slush falling out of the sky. She was dressed in a white and pearl dress on an emptied-out plaza with the crowd far away. Already, her Theriers, the secret servicemen of the Innocence, were worried about an assassination attempt. Oh yes, she looked like humanity's young mother, a perfect mother, insultingly beautiful. It was as if her face and shoulders and hands were covered in a soft down of underfeathers. You know this well, very well. Midwinter snow was beating the cobblestones around her. A small attaché of officials stood by as her Theriers placed a white gold wreath on her head. The crowning was mostly witnessed by secret servicemen. One of the men in this secret service killed her 22 years later. A young man who had come to suspect that Dolores Day was not entirely human, but something else. Something that had walked in our midst, watching us stumble for hundreds, if not thousands of years, until it decided to interfere in the course of our history. We were supposed to come up with this ourselves. The man was reported to have screamed at the Innocence. Dolores Day was shot in the chest with a fowling piece 8 times. The man, thought to be insane, said he once touched her and her body had been unnaturally warm, like a furnace, and that sometimes, while on duty, he observed her forgetting to breathe for over 10 minutes. This inhuman quality was witnessed by many others as well, glowing lungs and all. It is commonly attributed to mass hysteria and religious psychology. Terrifying is a term too emotionally charged for your semantic memory, or what remains of it. But terrifying, it's a simple word. She was bad for humanity, and you shouldn't have started thinking about her. You already do. Although she is often considered to be the greatest human being to ever live, there was something ominous about Dolores Day, constantly surrounded by her Theriers. She was the most socially secluded and least self-aware of all the Innocences. Some modern thinkers would consider her a war criminal for the campaigns she waged against the Mesk state. And then there were the resettlement programs. The Mesk state tried to detach itself from Innocentic rule. Parts of the world were experiencing whiplash from accelerating into secularism. Her mandatory education programs and mass resettlement of upstream Marguerite were problematic as well. Dissenters were suppressed by a military force she called the Army of Humanity, suggesting those who fight against it are not part of humanity. She adored chess, yes, but also military war games. Dolores Day often holds a tiny tin soldier between her index finger and thumb in icons such as this. She was also blonde, the blondest woman you have ever seen, with green eyes the color of the Pacentic, mare interregnum. Little is known of her Marchese husband. It's as if he vanished from history after completing his role, which was to introduce Dolores Day to court. In conclusion, yes, there is something lonely, paranoid, and even terrifying that people seldom mention, but feel when they think of her. This subtle terror is part of her iconography.
Lieutenant Yefreighter, you've stood there for over 5 minutes. What are you thinking of, if I may ask? She's been dead for 300 years. I am almost 1,000% certain she isn't connected to the case. None of this is, in fact. This church, the coast, this isn't a good place to get lost in.